Hey writers, welcome to today's lesson. Today we are going to study a mentor text. Again, you're going to be really familiar with this text. It is the one that we've already read, the scholarship jacket. So our objective for this lesson is I can study an example text to inspire and strengthen my writing. Remember that this is something everyone does. Artists, musicians, athletes, they study one another to get better and improve their craft. So this is going to be the third or fourth time that we're reading this mentor text now. And as we're studying, we're going to look closely on a few paragraphs at a time. So don't read the whole thing through. Let's focus on a few paragraphs. And since we are studying, we are writers and we are studying to learn as we read this, just going to think of the question, like, what do you like that the author did in this section? So let's read this and then we'll ask ourselves that question. My oldest sister, Rosie, had won the jacket a few years back, and I fully expected to also. I was 14 and in the 8th grade. I had been a straight A student since the 1st grade, and this last year had looked forward very much to owning that jacket. My father was a farm laborer who couldn't earn enough money to feed 8 children. So when I was 6, I was given to my grandparents to raise. We couldn't participate in sports at school because there were registration fees, uniform costs, and trips out of town. So even though our family was quite agile and athletic, there would never be a school sports jacket for us. This one, the scholarship jacket, was our only chance. So what do you like about what the writer did in this section? So I'll share with you what I liked about this section. I liked how she kind of painted the picture for us to help us understand what this jacket meant for her. So she tells us like her dad was poor, couldn't feed the children, so she was raised by her grandparents. But even with them, she wasn't allowed to do sports because of all those fees, and that this jacket was their only chance to have like a school jacket. So it really helps me understand how important this is for her. So since we are reading to study and looking at this text to learn from it, let's make a chart as we go, taking notes. What we just read was a great example of what we should all do with our writing, which is provide important background information that's going to help our reader understand our story a lot better. Let's look at another example and closely read these few paragraphs from our story. I was almost back at my classroom door when I heard voices raised in anger, as if in some sort of argument. I stopped. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I just hesitated, not knowing what to do. I needed those shorts and I was going to be late, but I didn't want to interrupt any argument between my teachers. I recognized the voices, Mr. Schmidt, my history teacher, and Mr. Boone, my math teacher. They seemed to be arguing about me. I couldn't believe it. I still remember the feeling of shock that rooted me flat against the wall, as if I were trying to blend in with the graffiti written there. I refuse to do it. I don't care who her father is. Her grades don't even begin to compare to Martha's. I won't lie or falsify records. Martha has been a straight A+ average, and you know it. That was Mr. Schmidt, and he sounded very angry. Mr. Boone's voice sounded calm and quiet. Look, Joan's father is not only on the board, he owns the only store in town. We could say it was a close tie, and... Alright, so now after reading that small section, what do you like that the author did here? So what I really liked about this part is she really set it up, like showing us, okay, well, first of all, we know that she's overhearing some argument between her teachers, but she didn't just say they were yelling at each other. She showed us with their dialogue how mad they were and what they were saying. So I can tell that this teacher, the first one that spoke, I refuse to do it. I don't care who her father is, right? I won't lie or falsify records. She is a straight A+ average and you know it. So this teacher's like putting up a fight. exclamation points, I don't care, I won't lie, you know it. Like all these words are kind of like explaining the tone. I can tell that he's frustrated by something. And then the other teacher, as she sets it up, says, like, sounded very calm and quiet. And I can hear that and see it with this dialogue that she provided. Look, like he's just being very factual. Like, these are the facts. Look, Joan's father is not only on the board, he owns the only store in town. We could say it was a close tie. There's no exclamation points, nothing. It's all kind of straightforward, just the facts. So the way that she explained this first teacher's dialogue and kind of set it up really helped me understand their tone. And then the same with the way that she put together the dialogue from the second teacher. So let's add to our chart. Based on that example we just saw, we already did this one, right? What I noticed, and something that's important with memoirs, is that when you're adding dialogue, that you, the writer, should make them say words and use a tone that shows their personalities and hints at the bigger meaning of the moment. So we know, like, the teachers were arguing, and this decision about the jacket is very important. It's going to affect our character, and we can really see like how mad people were based on that dialogue that they used. Let's look at this last example together, and we'll do the same steps of making observations. The next day, when the principal called me into his office, I knew what it would be about. He looked uncomfortable and unhappy. I decided I wasn't going to make it any easier for him, so I looked him straight in the eyes. He looked away and fidgeted with the papers on his desk. Martha, he said, there's been a change in policy this year regarding the scholarship jacket. As you know, it has always been free. He cleared his throat and continued. This year, the board has decided to charge $15, which still won't cover the complete cost of the jacket. I stared at him in shock. A small sound of dismay escaped my throat. I hadn't expected this. He still avoided looking me in the eyes. So what do you notice, or what do you like about this small excerpt of writing that the author did? So we have Martha, and how does she feel at this moment? And we also have the principal. So how do you think he feels during this moment? So I can tell how Martha feels by the small details that she gives us and her actions. So she says, I decided I wasn't going to make this any easier for him. So she's trying to make this hard for him because she's kind of mad, right, that she's getting called in here. I looked him straight into the eyes. She's like making direct eye contact with him because she's mad. She doesn't know what's going to happen, but she knows something about her jacket, right? And then how does the principal feel? Well, she said above here in that first sentence that he's uncomfortable and unhappy, but not only does she just say that, but she really shows us. So he looked away. He's not even looking at her, fidgeting with the papers on his desk. You can tell he's probably nervous and upset that he has to do this, or at least upset that he's having to tell her. He cleared his throat, so he's probably nervous. And then, look, he still avoids looking me in the eyes. He is like avoiding her to the extreme because he's uncomfortable and unhappy that he's having to do this. So we've been studying this text, looking at small paragraphs and looking like, what did the writer do? What did I like? And probably how can we do that in our writing? So what we just looked at an example of is how the writer zoomed into small but powerful details that capture the big moments and especially the big feelings. So we could really tell how mad Martha was and how uncomfortable the principal was because she gave us all these powerful little details. That's going to make your writing really strong. So right now, your task is to reread the scholarship jacket. You should be really familiar with this text by now, but I will suggest looking closely at maybe just a few paragraphs here and there. Don't read the whole thing at once. Maybe reread a few paragraphs like we just did. And then try to identify those techniques of what did you like in this section, and take notes in your writer's workshop journal or on your copy of the story. And then after reading closely and taking those notes, look back at your writing. Are you doing these things in your writing? Then go ahead and read your draft and add some of these techniques and strategies that you liked.